Hi, everybody. I'm Alana Campbell of You Have a Life Plan, and I'm here with Stan Dynick of Astro Insights and our friends Shweta and Kelly. And we're here to talk about what is going on in the astrological sky, what kind of conversations are happening between the planets, and how each of our astrological charts make us have a different perspective on what's going on and how we can contribute. And so first, I'm just going to mention that Stan has about 26 years of studying astrology, and I've been studying with Stan for about 3 years. And Kelly is in one of our group courses. She's been studying with us for 6 months, and Shweta is new. And so it kind of gives the viewer 4 different perspectives, like a seasoned astrologer's perspective, somebody who is fairly new 3 years in, and then 6 months in, and then brand new. So we're kind of hitting all levels there. And before we begin, we're just going to share kind of how we as people see what's going on right now, what we're really passionate about, and then we'll talk about what does the sky look like right now and how our different astrology charts would approach it. So you kind of see the chart level and the human level. And so myself on a human level, I'm not so concerned about the virus. I kind of see that this is an opportunity for us to learn how to respect each other, our own personal boundaries, and for us to reevaluate what's important. Like family's important, kids are important, how we educate kids, how we work together as a family, making more sustainable choices about, like, buying clothes that is made ethically or eating in an ethical way, or whatever. So I see this as an opportunity to shift. I'm not really in any rush. I do feel for people who are suffering right now and who are over concerned and living in fear. At the same time, I'm kind of trusting this process. So I will hand it off to either Kelly or Shweta to share how their perspective may be different.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Right. Hello, everybody. I'm Kelly. I'm actually really excited for everything that's going on right now. Although it's hard and it can be painful, I feel big change coming. I'm trying my best not to rush, but I really feel like I'm in a big hurry to get there, and there's a frustration that we're all not there yet. So I'm actually really grateful for the changes that are coming on right now. Again, it's not always, rainbows and unicorns, but it feels good and it feels time. And I'm rooting for all of us, and I'm happy to be here and chat with you guys today. Thanks.
Thanks, Kelly. Shweta here. Hi, everybody. I have been thinking about our economic models, our socio-economic models for a few years now. And what I feel strongly and passionately about is the unfairness in the world. And that unfairness, which stems, in my opinion, from our desire to make money first, leaves a lot of us in tricky spots, and it bleeds into all aspects of humanity. If we look at our education system, our medical system, our healthcare, our social welfare, everything is impacted by how we think about making money first. So I'm really curious to know, and I agree with you, Kelly. We are living in amazing times, because I feel like there's a lot of seeds being planted today for future changes for us as a humanity to see. And I do feel COVID is a catalyst to move us in a direction. And I'm hoping that direction is a new direction and a positive direction. So I'm curious to see how the stars align to make us see things differently for us, for me at least.
Okay, Stan.
Hey, hello, everybody. My name is Stan, and I'm here as a representing the view and the perception of Western astrology on today's events, or actually this year's events, and how those events have been unfolding in front of our eyes, in our families, in our lives, as well as try to kind of introduce a little bit of a historical perspective, and try to explain how what's going on, the planetary movements as astrology looks at it, how they've been impacting us and preparing us for those changes. I heard a couple of sort of what I would call maybe keywords or important keywords. Catalyst is one of them, definitely, but changes that have been happening, and I think it's arguable or not, but guys, the planets, the heavens have been preparing us for those changes, or sort of making suggestions, and hinting at what needs to change, where we need to, as humanity, as a collective, to change the way we go about making a living, and on the individual level, and predominantly on the collective level. And perhaps as we got as we already got into the third decade of the 21st century, perhaps become a little bit more responsible as how we do things, how we treat Mother Earth, how we use our resources, and what it is, what's going to become perhaps our new course of direction, our new way of continuing, evolving, and growing and expanding, but perhaps in a more responsible and sensible way, and making sure that we do not that we leave something behind for future generations, that we're not going to completely rob the earth of everything that it is capable of producing and feeding us. So that's going to be just part of our today's discussion, and also, I guess, a little bit of sharing of individual views and how we all kind of come into that, what's been happening and what we can expect in the coming months and years. I guess that's probably all I would have to say as my intro. Now, I don't know if we're going to jump into the slides, or what's our next step.
Go ahead and share your slides, Stan.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so just a little title page showing the astrological weather, or just the main conditions existing in the skies today, showing a little bit of the perhaps the background, or the mood for today's discussion, the mood for today's topic, recognizing that the sun is in Scorpio. We're essentially in the fall season, about 1/3 into it, in the northern hemisphere, and in the North American continent, part of the Earth that goes through 4 seasons. And with the sun being in Scorpio, we're already well underway. The moon today is in Aquarius, recognizing that we are in the first quarter phase, meaning that the moon has moved away from its new moon position that we experienced about a week ago. And so we are kind of actively moving forward with that energy. And also recognizing that the 4 sort of key players that I'm outlining here, the 4 energies are those of the Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and the 3 signs that are involved, indicating that there is kind of a big influence from what we in astrology call fixed signs, meaning signs that like to maintain the status quo, that are all about solidifying and sort of insisting on their point of view. They are perhaps the strength in astrology signs, but also the signs that progress at a little bit slower pace than the other ones. So the moon in Aquarius, I would like to believe, is gonna support the lively discussion, and especially with that influence from Uranus, we may be looking a little bit more boldly into the future. There's a little just a short article that I posted on Facebook about a month ago, trying to get a little bit of the discussion going, trying to perhaps inspire some people, trying to create some food for thought, being a little humorous about it, but also seeing if I can engage some people, or at least get people thinking about, what has been happening so far. A little bit of the idea of looking back now, as we are essentially in the last quarter of 2020, and looking back at the spring and summer months, and essentially, asking a question: how do you feel about the wild ride of 2020 so far? Are you completely satisfied, and would you agree that 2020 has answered all your questions and addressed all your concerns? Um, I mean, the idea here is to ask a question, because I think there may be some common ground. I think there may have been situations where some people would share the same employment reality, either fearing for their jobs or losing their jobs as a result of that. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of um, worrying about what's going to happen with me, what's going to happen with my loved ones. But also, I think a good potential, a good possibility for us to take that experience and say, what was perhaps, are there any positives? Has anyone actually been, the way the lockdown and the virus impacted your life? Would you say that it was, there was something positive that came out of it? Or perhaps you had a little bit of a vision happening. You could see that the potential of that, the potential of the change, and of us shifting into a different way that we go about, creating businesses and creating new ways of generating income, of supporting ourselves, and perhaps a little bit of, what we call out of the box thinking, and stretching beyond what the system can offer us. And those who have maybe a bit more of an enterprising spirit, a chance to step into that role and say, I want to be my own boss. I want to create my own future. I can, instead of waiting around for the system to wake up and to, reboot the economy, I can get moving. I can sort of start moving on, moving forward on my own, and perhaps, even take advantage of staying at home for, a few weeks or a few months, and creating new potentials, creating new possibilities. Um, Looking at today's chart, and also with a little bit of the retrospective look at essentially the entire 2020, and explaining why, or what has been happening from the point of view of Western astrology. Looking at this chart very quickly, and one of the reasons why, when you look at the chart and when you see 12 signs in a round circle, you'll see that some of the signs, if you're familiar with the symbols of astrology, you'll realize that some of the signs are shown in a lighter, brighter background, and some in a darker background. And the reason for it is that one of the main themes in Western astrology is that the spring and summer signs, so Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and Leo, and Virgo as well, are representing the perhaps the sun-dominated side, or the side of the half of the year where we have a lot more sunshine, where we are much more illuminated, contrasting it with the fall and winter signs shown in darker colors where the darkness dominates. And that is not to say that the spring and summer is good or bright or amazing, and the fall and winter all about descending into darkness and into fear. It's just to show that we are more active and more driven by individual sort of motivations in spring and summer, and we are we have a stronger tendency to align with a collective, to align with the group activities in the fall and in the winter time. So recognizing that and looking at what we would consider the three key players in what's been behind the world events, essentially, I would say even from late 2019, starting with all three planets being already in the sign of Capricorn, and perhaps Jupiter making that entry a little bit later. But essentially, what started happening in January 2020, and what has been sort of ongoing for the rest of the year is the connection, the conjunction, as we call it in astrology, between the three big planets, outer planets, Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto, all making their connections in the skies. Outer planets move very slowly, so their meetings, their conjunctions in the skies are essentially a big deal because they happen only so many years, and especially between Pluto and Saturn, where these connections happen roughly about every 30 some years. That usually means a change, a transformation, the beginning of something new, because conjunctions and meetings where the planets get together indicate new beginnings, indicate the ending of the old and the transition into the new. But just like with all our human affairs, these events, the endings and the beginnings are always not only transformational, but they are somewhat traumatic. I mean, some of the old ways in which we used to do things need to die, or need to be transformed, need to be changed, need to be reviewed, and perhaps reintroduced in new ways, as the old ways of us operating that way they have outlived their usefulness. I would say that the heavens, the planets, the skies, I mean, some people may find hints or suggestions, but I would say the pandemic is just one of a number of ways this could have played out. The meeting of the three planets is all about out with the old, in with the new, and we're talking, getting into perhaps even the last 2 decades of the previous century. The reality that some of us who have been around for, let's say, 40 some years, the reality of what we have experienced, the way we make a living, the way the society works, the way that we are structured through governments, institutions, police, and governments. This is all changing, and a new way of running society, the new way that we exist as a community is taking new shape, and that will be perhaps introduced as soon as the end of this year, or perhaps as we get into 2021. Changes will be ongoing, and changes will take some time. So we cannot expect things to happen immediately. But for those of us who are either born in January, or have strong influences in your astrology chart from the sign of Capricorn, and there are a number of ways that that influence can present itself, would have been the most impacted, would have been people who maybe not necessarily suffered the most. I mean, there was a possibility of perhaps taking advantage of the changes and kind of running with it, but definitely a group of people who have felt those changes and transformations perhaps at the deepest level, being affected perhaps at work or at home or through relationships. The remaining signs who also have been, you could say, hard hit by these three planets showing up in that portion of the sky would have been the sign of Cancer, and probably more so those Cancers born in July, towards the last, I would say, 10 days of Cancer. The sign of Libra, same thing, more so Libras born in October, and people with strong influences or being born in the sign of Aries. But having said that, I think a good portion of us either we have been affected or will be affected, and if we haven't really experienced it directly, perhaps we have experienced those transformations through the lives of our loved ones, of our relatives, of our friends, perhaps co-workers. Some of our friends might have lost their jobs, or were forced to perhaps find new ways of supporting themselves. Some of our friends might have lost their loved ones, um, either directly through being infected with a virus, or perhaps through struggles with getting proper medical attention. So there's been a lot of transformation going on, and that transformation will continue. And I think, I mean, it's arguable, but for those people who would agree that governments, institutions have been stepping up and trying their best to, carry us through, to support us through this transition. I think a lot of us also have a responsibility. I mean, I think it is our potential and our possibility to move into the new world, into the new reality, into the new economic possibilities, by sort of, seizing that opportunity, by taking some risk, or by recognizing that, we could either wait for everything to come back to normal, or we could try to chart a new course and envision a new future. And that is something that is, kind of interesting. I mean, it's something that we could all try to do. And I think also the group interaction, people collaborating, meeting, having friendly chats, whether directly or for Zoom or Skype, these are really important things that we should continue doing, because I think very few individuals will have all the pieces of the puzzle. I think it's great to chat, it's great to exchange information, to exchange our points of view, and to see how others are seeing it, so we can continue adjusting and figuring out how we fit into the greater scheme of things. But we are being affected at the social level, at the level where it's affecting all our lives, and it's affecting our lives because the world has become so interdependent, not just on a let's say local, provincial level, but on a national level and an international level, through manufacturing, through production, through goods being produced or let's say collected or harvested in some parts of the world, and are being turned into finished products somewhere else, and then they're being shipped all over the world. And that interdependence, what happened in 2020, that showed us that interdependence is a fragile creature. It's something that exists and it functions well, but it really didn't take a lot for it to be undermined, or at least to be sort of uprooted. So we all had to scramble and find other ways of supporting ourselves, of coming up with even the better like products that we need on a daily basis. Shortages of just basic items, and you know, a lot of us scrambling and finding you know, the products that we need in the stores so we can continue on with our lives. So I believe one of the angles that we're going to explore in this chat is going to be how we are all impacted in different ways based on the decade or the generation that we were born into, and how we are sort of conditioned collectively as a group of people who have come into this world with certain social and collective conditioning, and how we might view these challenges differently based on our age bracket and based also on our life experiences so far. Which, you know, and also looking at the areas of our lives where those strong influences are kind of playing out on a much stronger, much deeper level, and how we're also responding to those challenges and changes. So moving into the next slide, and looking at the charts of today's participants, of Alana, Kelly, and Shweta, and looking at you know, what the kind of the energies, the challenges, the perceptions, the visions and the beliefs of the generation that they bring into today's discussion table, and looking also at you know, where the planets that were affecting us today, where they existed in their charts when you know, the decade when they were born, and how that's you know, how those planets have moved and how they you know, are impacting them today, and recognizing that you know, as we take a closer look at all three charts, and perhaps starting with the two planets which are sort of making us, you know, allowing us to be socially integrated. Jupiter and Saturn, in Western astrology, they exist as social integrators, as two planets who are not only responsible for the world's economy and how we sort of go about you know, creating economic prosperity, how nations and economies grow and evolve, and you know, how people get richer, and where the world's attention is directed when it comes to looking for new ways to prosper, to generate income, to generate wealth. But also on an individual level, those planets are allowing us to find our place in society, to integrate, to feel kind of part of the larger collective, to be either to feel invited, to feel welcome, or perhaps to feel a bit of an outcast. So in the case of the three charts that are in front of us, we're seeing that Saturn and Jupiter, Saturn is in Leo in two charts, and it's in Virgo, just the early degrees of Virgo in Shweta's chart here at the top. Jupiter also in two different signs, in Cancer in both Alana's and sorry, in Shweta's chart, in Gemini in Kelly's chart. And what we can, the conclusion we can draw from that is broadly speaking, is that what it meant to be for that generation, what it meant to be socially integrated, to be sort of socially recognized, meant to be a little bit more of an individual. It was a stronger focus on, you know, me and my creativity, perhaps, or me and my ideas. Perhaps maybe in, you know, in an opposition to the established order. So generation that would have to come in and individuals born in this generation who would perhaps make a name for themselves or become a little bit more recognized or famous would be those who would dare to kind of step outside of what would be considered the norm, or would dare to leave the tribe and find their own path. Perhaps it would mean to become your own entrepreneur, or find ways in which you could be a bit of an entertainer, be a bit of a showman, to find your own creativity, to find your own playfulness, to be an individual, even though you are part of a crowd, you're part of a gang or a team. And that's where we're seeing the influences of the outer three planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, being positioned more in the signs of the fall season. In Scorpio, or Pluto being in Libra, Uranus in Scorpio, and Neptune in Sagittarius. And then we will see that these three planets are actually in the exact same signs for all three charts. So in the case of these three planets being born a few months apart, sometimes even a year, 2, 3, 4 years, doesn't change all that much. They may move, they may shift, they may get into the middle of the sign or the tail end of the sign, but it will still remain in the same sign for a good number of years, especially with Pluto. So the message for the generation and essentially for that decade of people being born and having to sort of recognize and try to work with these planetary energies in their adult life would be to try to be a little bit more socially integrated. Try to kind of, despite the need to individuate, try to see the point of view of the collective. Try to be a team player. Those three planets were trying to transform the way we operate, the way we connect, perhaps initially through partnerships, through finding people who we can get along with, perhaps being our personal, our close, life mates, partners, but perhaps also our friends, our allies, people who would support us, or people who we could engage in a mutual support in business and perhaps even in social circumstances. How do we relate? How do we create a more partnerships based more in equality, partnerships based more on understanding that there's no need for one person to have power over the other. So equal exchange of ideas, of needs, of wants, of people collaborating and being understanding, being considerate towards each other, and also through perhaps bigger social changes on the level of everything that we kind of in a way makes us different globally. I mean, we have different cultures, we have different religions, we have different points of view, we have different upbringing, and recognizing that needs to be also viewed as let's find some common grounds. Let's find some ways that we can, agree to disagree. Perhaps, we can talk about different ways in which we experienced life up until a certain point. But we also have to acknowledge that people from different corners of the world could be looking at life in a very different way, and we have to find a space and a way in which we can, allow everyone to breathe, allow everyone their space, their breathing room, their ability to express it, and for everyone sort of come to terms with that without necessarily seeing someone who has a different point of view, or who has, you know, different religious beliefs as you know, as a stranger, as an enemy. So more about social integration. So, you know, there was a slow buildup as we, you know, we kind of ended that decade and eventually got into the last 20 years of the 20th century, with other cycles starting, other cycles ending. But, you know, as you can see, the movement of these planets, the three of them were slowly but surely moving into eventually into the sign of Scorpio, Sagittarius, and eventually to start affecting us kind of more on a collective, on a global level, through these planets moving through the signs of Sagittarius, Capricorn, and eventually getting into Aquarius. Neptune is currently in traveling through Pisces, again based on how we view things from Western astrology perspective. Still exerting its influence socially, globally, still trying to send its message to us, you know, to the huge masses, reaching individual more through group activities, group interactions, through how we view things as a group, as a local community, as a society, as a nation. So I mean, so we have some common points. We have some ways in which you know, these three charts, and actually, you know, people who represent them, and also through their lives and their life experiences, how they would be affected more on a social level. There are also some indicators of slight differences, slight sort of different ways in which we kind of, you know, view things, and how we, despite being born, let's say, in the same month, or only being born a few weeks or a couple of months apart from each other, we can still remain individuals, and we can still have a different view of things, despite being born into the same generation and the same decade. And some of these differences will, you know, could be highlighted, or could be sort of viewed from the elements of the signs. And we see actually some similarities there. So there was a strong influence from pretty much all four elements. I think the fire element is the one that kind of stands out the strongest. And it's essentially from the Alana's Aries moon, from Shweta's Sagittarius sun. She also happens to have her Venus there, and from Kelly's Leo ascendant. You know, the other elements are there, perhaps not as sort of strongly supported. But you know, the other thing that we can notice here is the strong influence or connection. In other words, the three outer planets that I've been talking about, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, in some in charts of some individuals, in charts of some people, they will still exist, but there will be no strong links from these planets. So perhaps the lives of these people are going to be or are not going to be as strongly affected by them. At least not as, you know, what I would call kind of a life mission of having to integrate those planets into our lives, and having to find a way in which we can use them for the benefit of you know, a greater group. You know, I'm seeing that influence in all three charts in varying degrees, but they're certainly there, indicating a possibilities that when the time comes, and when these position of these planets is either triggered directly, or perhaps these planets, as they move around the charts and eventually end up hitting or aspecting or influencing sensitive points in these charts. Sort of like stepping on someone else's toes, or tapping someone on the shoulder. These planets, that's their planet's way of asking us to pay attention, to say, hey, I've come to visit you, and this is what I'd like you to do. And your chart indicates that you're expected to play a significant role. The challenge is still up to us to kind of take it or not. I mean, we have free will. We can accept it, or we can say, or we can reject it and say that's too much. But either way, circumstances, people may show up in our lives. Something, there could be events, there could be just some internal turmoil for us to recognize that something around us is changing, and perhaps it would be good for us to respond to it. Some other minor differences worth noting are going to come from the phases of the moon, and also Mercury's in the chart, where they were in relation to the sun. And those may or may not be significant. I mean, they're definitely part of our sort of unique signature, unique way of looking at things. Looking at both Alana and Kelly's charts, the gibbous moon would be something that where perhaps they would find some common ground in the way they would view their lives, and how how they could explain or how they could react to things happening. In Shweta's case, because she was born with a new moon, that new moon would be more of an idealist. All three moons are part of the waxing, the growing phase, or the half cycle, essentially. So we could say broadly that all three are builders, are interested more in creating and in introducing new things. But in Kelly's and Alana's case, there would be more of a need to engage with other people, to be sort of more engaged, more enmeshed, more involved with the lives of others, because it's through the lives of others, through interacting with them, that's how they could realize their life potential and their life goals. So that would be an interesting way in which they could sort of see how their life could unfold. And looking obviously at the with a view of what we're going through these days, recognizing that even though we're not seeing the planets moving around these charts, but we can, knowing where they are, we can sort of draw some conclusions and say that perhaps in Alana's case, the changes and transformations of 2020 and beyond would be more in her social sphere, in her responsibility to the collective, in her playing a social role and perhaps stepping up to it, or recognizing that perhaps through what she's doing, she could affect many other people. In Shweta's case, these changes are more personal. They are more that part of the sign of Capricorn affecting more her personality and her identity, and perhaps being expressed more through how she feels, how she interacts with other people, how she comes across. So however those energies are playing out in her life, she might perhaps talk more about them, or through just being, her body language, her the way she speaks, the way she communicates, the way she comes across, that would become visible. But changes about her personality and her outer appearance are being affected by those three planets. For Kelly, perhaps there would be more about, through direct interaction with these planets, would be more about the area of life where she is supposed to express her playfulness, of her creativity, of her ability to have fun and to enjoy life. and to recognize that we have maybe not so much the right, but we all allowed that with the hard work we put in and the blood, sweat, and tears and effort that we put into daily lives. We are allowed to have some fun, have some entertainment, have some ability to express ourselves. So which is quite often dependent also on how secure we feel, how much of security is there, how much are we certain about our future. If we feel safe and secure, perhaps we also are going to feel that it's okay to play, that it's okay to have fun, that it's okay to have that hour, a couple of hours a day when we do not need to worry, when we can maybe turn off and tune out the news, and just go about doing something that we enjoy doing. There could be an interaction with our kids or someone else's kids. I mean, there is the element of playfulness that either we provide or we reach out to others, that can provide that element of fun and enjoyment. I guess at this point, a question from me. Do we move on to the next slide, or do we kind of pause and see where we are today, and see if we want to continue on, or perhaps questions, comments?
I do have a question if this is the right time to be asking questions.
Sure.
So you mentioned Saturn being in Leo and Virgo and different signs, and Jupiter being in Gemini and Cancer.
Mhm.
So does Saturn in Leo have different impacts versus Saturn in Virgo? Same for Jupiter?
Slightly. So yes, based on what we like to call in astrology keywords. So in other words, every sign has 6, 8, 12 different words associations that essentially are either activities or areas of life or certain ideas, concepts that we associate more with that sign. With Leo, it would be more playfulness, creativity. With Virgo, it's more about work, duty, and kind of being practical and being useful. But the common ground between those two signs is that they both signs of the summer season. So they both trying to do the same thing. They both trying to find their area of expertise of being the best at what they do, except Leo would do it more in a, ta-da way, like, look at me. Am I not the greatest? Am I not, the best person there is? Leos like to shine and to really express themselves and to, feel that, for them, life is still kind of, a game. It's like in famous Madonna's song, "Express Yourself." I mean, it's what you are all about. It's being playful and having fun. Virgo likes to be a little bit more responsible. So Virgo looks at it as, well, perhaps, I don't really want to be in a stage in a spotlight, but I have some skills. I am really good at fixing things or improving things or adjusting things. So let me get busy with that. So Virgos are more about, Leos could be a little bit more about, talk and entertainment and being a little bit more flashy. Virgos just like to kind of get busy and say, well, I'm gonna fix something. I'm gonna improve something. And they may also feel that they're the best to do it, or at least they have the best plan, the best scheme in which to get it done. But they're a little bit more shy, a little bit more modest. So there is, right there is a distinctive difference between the two signs. One being a little bit more extroverted, a little bit more, in our face. I mean, think about the actors or entertainers on the stage. For Leo and Virgo is the staff behind the curtain, people who are responsible for the lights, for the sound, for the, the smoke effects, just as much part of the show, but perhaps, remaining invisible. So that's those two signs, Cancer and Gemini. Well, okay, there is a seasonal shift as Cancer is already summer and Gemini is late spring. But both signs are the signs where they kind of meet together, at this point. So right around the summer solstice, June 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd. This is where, that's where we experience, I mean, especially in Canada, but essentially in most of the Northern Hemisphere, we experience the longest day. So again, both signs like to play, both signs like to be independent, to run around, to do their own thing. Um, you know, Arguably, this sign of Gemini sort of signifying or symbolizing uh, total independence or total freedom. We're just, let me do my own thing. Let me, I have my own ideas. I have my own ways of looking at things. I have nothing against being a team player, but for now, I just want to do my own thing because, Geminis really don't need the crowd of people, don't need their social support to be who they are. In terms of cancers may like to have that security of the home and family. They are a strongly independent sign as well, but they are, being the beginning or the first sign of the summer season, and also being of a watery nature as opposed to Gemini being airy nature. They like to sort of express themselves through feelings, through nurturing other people. So there is that almost like a quintessential mothering aspect there. But both signs showing strong pull towards, let me do my own thing. It's still a lot of daylight. It's still a lot of strong sun energy and need to really express ourselves. A lot of times outside, I mean, Cancer is not really known, maybe in a textbook way, but Cancer sign is not really known for being all that social. That's more Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, the signs that like to party and they like to have, be surrounded. I mean, Cancer needs just, their loved ones around and they're fine. But I mean, they're going to be a little busier, Gemini, just lots of ideas, a lot more scattered. But hey, I mean, we need people with independent thinking. We need people who are going to challenge and say, if you tell Gemini, don't do that, he's going to say, says who, I'm doing it and, try to stop me. So, all four signs in a way, very independent. I would say between the four, Gemini would probably take the crown. And and be the most independent, but there are connections, right? So they're not, even though the signs may be described in a very different way, they share some common ground there.
So does it mean, from what I understand, that being a Sagittarius, my ruling planet is supposed to be Jupiter, but when in my sign, if Jupiter moves into Gemini, I, as a Sagittarius, will manifest whatever Jupiter is supposed to influence with the traits of a Gemini, even though I am a Sagittarius?
Well, actually, okay, in your chart, Jupiter is actually already in Cancer. I'm trying to see where I think Kelly has Jupiter in Gemini. Well, okay, I mean, that's part of perhaps a longer discussion, but just to, yes, you're right. I mean, that's a very good question because it touches on the subject of what we call in astrology the ruling planet. So you're right, because you were born in the sign of Sagittarius, or the Sun and your Venus, those two planets, along with Neptune, were in that sign. In order for us to better understand, the role you're supposed to play. I mean, Sagittarius kind of provides one way of describing it. We look to where where Jupiter is in your chart, and it is in the sign of Cancer. It's also in the sixth house. When we combine those two things, we can sort of start drawing conclusions. So, to give you kind of a very quick answer, Jupiter will be busy doing what most planets do in the sixth house, and that is collecting skills, collecting, the sixth house is a lot, has a lot to do with our health, our attitude towards health, the diet, but also in us acquiring skills and abilities to function properly. So it is, it is about, Jupiter will do its own thing. So it will always be looking out for, looking for sort of a greater picture, looking beyond the horizons, trying to expand your point of view. That's perhaps also where you're going to benefit in life the most, is by looking at those issues, by paying attention to your health, by paying attention to the skills that you have in perhaps learning the new things. Also, perhaps indicating, I mean, that's not necessarily true, but it could also mean that you would benefit greatly from having some kind of a teacher, a mentor, someone who would, guide you and become like, the master that you would follow. That could be on a professional level, could be on a personal level, could be something that you might want to explore as part of your life philosophy or understanding your role in life. And Jupiter would let you kind of would enlighten that, or would show you this is the path to go. So these opportunities, opportunities for learning, essentially opportunities for learning new skills, new knowledge, new ideas. And that's, kind of, that would be fuel for your Sagittarius sun. So if you think of being a Sagittarius, being a vehicle, being a car, Jupiter is providing fuel for it. If you don't use your Jupiter properly, then you're going to run out of fuel, and your Sagittarius vehicle, your car, is going to stop. It won't progress forward. So that's kind of how I would tie those two things together.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
I think this is great for today. My children are starting to surface, as you can see in the background. Is that okay with everyone else if we pick this up next time we can get together?
Kelly!
Hi, Kaden. Yeah, I'm okay with
Ben,
that.
can we
Okay.
play with the...
Part of the norm. Part of the norm. Yeah.
Shweta, when can me and Sabine do Minecraft?
I will text your mom in a bit.
Okay.
Fix it.
She will text me in a bit. Okay.
Kelly, when can you come to our house to play?
Well, we'll figure that out. You guys have to all be healthy.
Right.
No sniffles, and I'm on my way over.
In here.
She says we all have to be healthy. No more sniffles, okay?
Phoebe
Go talk to your baby.
Nobody's sick.
All right. I'm going to cut out, or at least stop the recording. And I'll touch base with all of you, okay?
Okay.
You're on mute, Alana, I think.
Well, I think she had to